Hey guys, it's Dave here from Creative Path Films, and today we're doing a review of the Visico FT-650RX. Now, Visico sent us a sample unit for review, which we do get to keep. No money has changed hands, and Visico do not get to review or have any input on this video before its publication. As always, my thoughts are my own. You'll find links to everything we talk about today down in the description below. All right, let's get started, and we'll start with the key features. The Visico FT-650RX is a 60-watt RGBWY 1x1 foot panel, and it has a combination of 144 2700 Kelvin LED diodes, 144 6500 Kelvin diodes, and 288 RGB diodes. The light also has 4 pixel zones that you can utilize in the pixel effects mode. The light has a CCT range of 2700 Kelvin all the way through to 10,000 Kelvin, so it's quite a wide CCT range. It also features a green magenta shift from 0 to plus or minus 100, a full 360 degree HSI mode, and a series of 15 standard effects and 12 pixel effects. The light features a wired DMX in and out via a 5-pin XLR, but it has no built-in CRMX functionality. At 5500 Kelvin, the light has an advertised CRI of 96 plus and a TLCI of 97 plus. Now, we don't currently have a spectrometer available, so I'm unable to verify these reports, but if true, that's a very accurate color render, and I think you should be very happy with those scores. The light is currently priced at $235.55 US for the light on its own, or $265.08 when bundled with a softbox, which I highly recommend. There aren't currently any Australian listings, but Visico have told me that there will be a few coming up very shortly. For the standalone package, you get the light, an AC adapter, which has a 1.5 meter head lead, a 1.5 meter regional power cable, and a fabric bag with a Velcro seam at the top. It also comes with a magnetic diffusion panel, which is easy to snap in and out of place. Just be careful it doesn't slip too far back into the body when you're putting it back in, as it can get caught and could potentially snap if you're not careful. This panel is a lighter grade of diffusion, which just takes the edge off. There's also the option to pick up a bundle package with a softbox and a light control grid included for an additional $30 US. The light panel is close to a 1x1 in size. It's got a light emitting surface area of 28.5 by 27.5 centimeters and an overall size of 40 by 38 centimeters. This light is also very thin at just 6.5 centimeters. The body of the light is constructed predominantly out of an aluminium alloy, which is a really nice feature for a budget light. Only the back panel area on the light is made out of plastic. The casing is held together with small screws, bolts, and rivets. It also has a set of black anodized aluminium barn doors, which are permanently attached, a metal yoke, and a metal baby receiver. The sheet metal body is covered in thermal vents, which kind of make it look a bit like a pegboard. There are 2 big advantages to this design choice: weight and heat distribution. The vents reduce the overall weight of the unit, making it very light for a metal light, even with batteries attached. It's light enough that I would be comfortable suspending it from an auto pole or even on the end of a gobo arm. The weight of the light on its own is 1,850 grams, or approximately 4 pounds, and the weight with 2 Sony NPF 970 batteries is approximately 2,470 grams, or about 5.45 pounds. The other advantage is that the vents allow the heat to dissipate easily out of the body. So there are no need for any internal cooling fans in this unit, meaning it runs completely silently. It does get quite warm to the touch when it's been running at full power for a while, but not enough to burn you. Visico states the average operating temperature of the light should sit around 45 degrees Celsius or 113 degrees Fahrenheit. The tests we conducted were in the hot Australian summer with an average ambient temperature of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And I ran the gamut with this light over several weeks for hours at a time. so I'm not concerned about overheating. Now let's talk about some of the disadvantages of this design. Now, despite it being made of metal, the sheet metal used feels a little bit thin to me, and I suspect it would dent if it was dropped or took a decent hit, but it's still much better than plastic. The plastic back panel does feel quite well made. Another disadvantage to this design is it does present some light leaks from the top, bottom, and sides of the light. Now, the light coming out of these vents on the side, it's not too bad on its own, so the light kind of bounces around inside of the light and it only comes out as an ambient glow more than anything else. I doubt you'd notice it unless you were shooting in a very dark space. Now, there is a more noticeable light leak, however, which comes from the gap between the light itself and the barn doors. Because this gap is in front of the diodes, it results in a direct shaft of light that spills out on all sides. Now, this can be rectified, however, if you're using the optional softbox. The softbox has been designed in such a way that it sits completely flush with the body of the light and blocks out the light coming through these gaps. We'll talk more about the softbox a little later on. Possibly the biggest disadvantage of this design is that there's absolutely no weather sealing on this light at all. In fact, if you remove the magnetic front diffuser, you'll find the LED diodes and the board very much exposed to the elements. So for me, that makes this light an indoor studio light only, and I wouldn't be using it for any kind of exterior shooting or in an area where there's lots of dust, dirt, or moisture that could get into the internal components. Now let's have a look at the rest of the body. The light has an all-metal yoke and baby receiver, with two metal ratchet handles on either side, securing the yoke to the light. I really like the choice of ratchet handles because you can easily reposition them to set them at different angles. It also helps to keep them tucked out of the way so that no one's accidentally going to gouge out part of their arm if they accidentally walk into it. The yoke has been set up with a decent gap between the bottom of the light and the yoke. Now, unfortunately, because the barn doors are permanently attached, the light has a very limited downward tilt angle of about 40 degrees, and it's restricted even further to only about 20 degrees if you have the softbox attached. Now, you can mitigate this by utilizing the secondary mounting hole in the baby receiver and orienting the yoke horizontally on a light stand rather than vertically. Now, do this with caution though, as the balance will be offset and the light will no longer be centrally weighted over the middle of the stand. If you try this setup yourself, make sure that you have one of your stand legs directly underneath the light, as well as shot bags or sandbags to help it from toppling over. If you intend to use this light suspended from above, such as from a grid, an auto pole, or a boom arm, then you will no longer be restricted by the downward tilt. Now, this could have been improved if the yoke had been designed with either a slightly larger gap or if the yoke had been set at a slightly forward angle, offsetting the light slightly. Now, this definitely isn't a deal breaker, but it is annoying and it's something to be aware of going in. The metal barn doors are nicely made and they feel very solid. I feel like the potential point of failure though could be the small screws that secure them, as they could come loose and fall out over time. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on those. The Visico FT-650RX has two options when it comes to powering the light. It can be powered by either the included AC adapter, which features a 5.5 by 2.1mm locking DC barrel, which accepts between 15 to 20 volts at up to 5 amps. Or it can be powered by two Sony NPF style batteries. We tested the light using two 660 mAh NP F970 batteries, and we were able to power the light for a total of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 30 seconds at 5,600 Kelvin at full power. The advertised power draw of the light comes in at 70 watts, and its transformer supplies 75 watts. But throughout all my testing, the highest the light ever peaked was at 57.6 watts. Even when operating at 100% intensity. Now let's have a look over the output results that I measured during our testing. I took measurements at 1 meter and 3 meters, and with and without the softbox attached. For the measurements without the softbox, I left the panel diffuser attached, as I figured that's how the majority of users will use this light day to day. Here are the results at 1 meter with no softbox. Here are the results at 3 meters with no softbox. Here are the results at 1 meter with the softbox attached. And here are the results at 3 meters with the softbox attached. Next, let's have a look at the back panel and the user interface on the back of the unit. First, you'll find the DMX in and out ports, which use 5-pin XLR. We currently don't have any DMX controllers, so this is not something we were able to test at this time. Next to that, you have a control dial and then a bi-directional on and off switch. If you switch it to the left, the light will power from the AC adapter. If you flick it to the right, it will power off the batteries, with the center position being the off position. Above the control dial, we have the interface, which consists of 4 buttons and a dot matrix screen for navigating the menu. Now let's go through the menus and user interface. I found the interface and the overall user experience on this light to be very user-friendly and easy to operate. The first button on the left is the Set button, which you can use to adjust your DMX settings. The second is the Mode button, which allows you to cycle between the CCT, HSI, Standard Effects mode, and Pixel Effects modes. And then you have an up and down arrow for navigation, and an intensity dial for making your adjustments. There's also this useful little guide just below the adjustment dial, showing you the degrees value for red, yellow, green, and blue on the HSI scale. Now this may seem a little bit novel at first, but it's actually quite useful when you're out on the go. Something quirky that I've noticed when using the dial is it doesn't make adjustments in a linear fashion. It seems to be somewhat acceleration based, but counterintuitively, the faster you spin the dial, the smaller the adjustment. For example, if you were to do a half turn on the dial and you spin it slowly, you can dim the light from 0 to approximately 15%. But if we make that same adjustment, but spin the dial as fast as we can, we may only get a 3% adjustment. So it pays to be patient with this light and make your adjustments gently. Otherwise, you might find yourself frustrated by how much you have to spin the control dial to get it up to full output. Now let's have a look at each mode in turn, starting with the CCT mode. As you can see in this mode, the light has full dimming capability from 0 to 100%, a CCT range from 2700 Kelvin to 10,000 Kelvin, and a green magenta shift option which you can dial in from 0 to plus or minus 100. Now let's navigate across to the HSI mode. Here you have 3 adjustments you can control. You can adjust the dimming, again from 0 to 100, your hue from 0 to 360 degrees to select your color choice, and then you can adjust your color saturation from 0 to 100%. It should be noted that this light desaturates down to 6,500 Kelvin rather than the 5,600 Kelvin daylight standard. The next mode is the standard effects panel. I'll open by saying that if you want to get the most out of the effects functionality for these lights, you really need to download the VISICO app and control them that way. Most of the effects have fairly limited controls on the back panel of the light, and the app unlocks a lot of customization options that you don't have access to without it. We'll come back to the app a little bit later on. For now, let's see what you have access to from the back of the light. In the standard effects menu, we have 15 effects to choose from, which include hue loop, CCT loop, intensity loop, flash, pulse, storm, police car, TV, paparazzi, fire, disco, bad bulb, fireworks, explosion, and welding. I liked the police car and bad bulb the most, whereas I found some of the looping effects to be a little too steppy for me. They didn't have those smooth, gradual transitions that I would have preferred. Now, if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't be buying this light for the effects. I think several of them could do with some refinement. But that being said, really good effects tend to be pretty hard to come by anyway. Next along is the pixel effects. This light has 4 different pixel zones that you can utilize for programming in these effects. The difference between the pixel effects and the standard effects is the standard effects use the entire array of diodes, fading or flashing between the different colors, whereas the pixel effects utilize 4 different pixel zones instead. The 12 pixel effects are hue loop, CCT loop, intensity loop, multicolor, fade, scroll, rainbow, police car, and ambulance. Now I must say, I generally prefer the pixel effects on this light to the standard effects, with my favorites being the rainbow effect and the ambulance effect. I haven't seen an ambulance effect on a light before, and I thought it was pretty cool. Some of the pixel effects suffer from the smaller size of the unit. Effects like the driving effect or the police car effect really need a much longer fixture to do them justice. Something like a 4-foot light tube. In a small 1x1 panel, the color chasers don't have that much room to travel, so the colors tend to blend together and the effect can get a little bit lost. A good example is the police light effect. Here, the two sides of the light are so close together that the red and blue pixels tend to blend together when they fall on the subject, resulting in a flashy, purpley light. This is why I prefer the standard police effect on this unit, which alternates fully between the two colors. Even more so than the standard effects, the pixel effects really rely on the app to unlock their full potential. Let's have a look at the multicolor effect, for example. You need the app to be able to select each of the specific colors. If you select multicolor from the back of the light, you've only got access to the default values. Now let's have a look at the Visico Mobile App. Now, surprisingly, I really like the app, and I don't say that often. It's super intuitive, easy to use, and it just works. The user experience is really solid. It's simple, and it's been well thought out. To pair a light, it's a very easy process. Simply switch the light on, hit the plus sign, and the light will pop up. Then simply tap on the ID of the light to pair it, and you're done. It's very quick. Then just tap through to the light itself to access the settings. Once it's loaded, you have access to all of the different functions and modes that you can access from the back of the light, plus a few extras. We'll start with the HSI mode. So in the HSI mode, you get this really nice big color wheel, which lets you select all of the different values. You can also manually adjust the hue settings using the slider, and you can adjust your saturation and the dim as well. Super easy. If you want to navigate back out of any menu item, simply hit the icon at the bottom of the screen with the 9 dots, or you can simply swipe from left to right. Next, we have the CCT mode. As you can see, we have a bunch of presets ready to go, which I really appreciate. You've got 2700 Kelvin all the way up to 10,000 degrees Kelvin, with most of the standard values already preset for you. Below that, you have a dimming slider as well as some dimming presets with 0, 5, 25, 50, 75, and 100%. Moving down, you also have your green magenta shift, which starts at the default value of 0, and you can adjust in either direction to plus or minus 100. The next function is the color card option. This menu is populated with a selection of different Lee and Roscoe gels that you can apply to the light. Tapping on each one will automatically select the appropriate hue and saturation levels for each of these different gels. Now, because these are essentially a series of HSI presets, I believe the base Kelvin value for these gel effects would also be 6500 Kelvin, but I can't definitively confirm that. Next, we've got our standard effects panel. Here you've got access to all of these standard effects that we explored earlier, but with added controls for quite a few of them. There's quite a bit of customization that's unlocked using this mobile app. Let's look at the storm effect, for example. You can now further refine or even manually trigger the effect. One thing to note is there is a little bit of a delay between when you trigger something in the app and it actually fires on the light. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Via the app, you can also control things like the speed of certain effects, and you can make precise color selections. A good example of this is the fire effect, which by default, it uses some higher Kelvin temperatures around 5600 Kelvin, and that just isn't realistic for fire. But through the app, you can now customize these values. I found a good result by selecting a hue rather than a CCT and selecting 30 degrees. And then I restricted the hue shift down to only 10 degrees either side. So it will flicker within the orange spectrum, and this makes for a much more believable effect. Now let's head back into the menu. Next, we have our preset options. This is the part of the app where you can set up different presets that you can come back to time and time again. For example, if we go over to the HSI mode, let's say you have a branded color that you want to save. You can simply dial it in, and then if you click on the top right-hand corner of the app, you can select the little plus icon, and it will prompt you to add a scene. Then simply give it a name, hit yes, and it will appear in your preset list. You can have preset colors, preset effects that you might have customized, or any other value that you want to come back to down the line. It's also very easy to delete or rename your presets if you want by simply clicking on the 3 dots on the right-hand side of each preset. Next, we have our color picker. Now this works a little bit differently to the other color pickers that I've used in the past. For this one, you need to first take a photo of the object that you want to select a color from, and then you choose your point that you want to extrapolate those colors from. You can also import reference images that you've saved to your camera roll. The last menu option is the pixel effects. So in here, pixel effects really come to life in the mobile app. As you can see, it's really nicely laid out and it's very simple to navigate. Let's jump into hue loop, for example. Here we can select the hue range from 0 to 360 degrees. You can set your dim, your saturation, and your effect speed all in the one screen. This is a lot more customization than we had before. Let's have a look at another effect, the multicolor effect. If you select this effect from the interface on the back of the light, it's very limited. You can't even change the colors being emitted. But in the app, you can unlock things like the direction, so whether it moves left to right or right to left. You can change the number of colors from 2 up to 4, and then you can dial in those colors, either selecting a CCT value, a HSI value, or by turning one of the pixel areas off and setting it to black. You simply can't do this on the back of the light by itself. You can also add some additional effects down the bottom to further customize the effect. So this just goes to show that the app really does unlock a huge amount of customization options for this light. One final function that I want to show you that the app unlocks is that you can set up and operate groups of lights as well. This allows you to control multiple fixtures at once in a master-slave configuration if you have multiple Visico products. To set this up, simply tap the plus sign next to light group and then give the new group a name. Then select the 3 dots next to your newly created group and select add device. Select the lights that you want to add and hit confirm settings. Please note that before you can do this, you already have to have paired all your lights within the mobile app. It will then take a moment to configure the 2 lights and it will move them into your new group. Then simply click the group, select which light you'd like to be the master light, and you're good to go. Now both lights will mirror one another and work in tandem. When testing this mode, I did notice a slight delay between the 2 lights, so unfortunately they aren't perfectly in sync with one another. This is most noticeable with effects like storm or police car, where the lights flash very quickly. I'm hoping this is something that Visico can improve with firmware updates, because this could really be a very powerful function if the 2 lights can be perfectly in sync. If you want to go back to individually controlling each of the lights, you will need to delete the group to do so. Simply tap on the 3 dots and hit delete group. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you have the option of purchasing a bundle that includes a softbox and grid to pair with this light. Now, this is a really nicely made softbox, and I highly recommend it if you're looking to pick up this light. Now, I must say the softbox design itself is a little unconventional, and it kind of tripped me out when I first got it out of the box. It also didn't come with any installation instructions, so I would suggest to Visico, please make one up and print them out, showing how to install this thing, because it absolutely did my head in for an embarrassingly long time before I finally figured it out. The design utilizes the barn doors to create a rigid structure around the softbox. The softbox is lined with a silvered section that I didn't realize at first is actually attached by Velcro. When I first pulled it out of the box, I thought each side of the softbox was a rigid structure, and I was like, how do I attach this? Does it go over the top of the barn doors? No, that doesn't make sense. That would make the silvering a moot point. And then I realized there were pockets in between the silvering layer and the outer shell. And I thought, okay, I've got to kind of slide the barn doors into these pockets, which I tried, and it was very, very difficult. Then I started to feel the silvering pulling away from the outer shell, and I actually thought I was tearing the softbox trying to push the barn doors into it, until I realized that it was actually Velcro holding the lining in place. And you can actually peel back each panel, fold it in, then slide the barn doors into the softbox, and then fold the silvering back over the inside. Once this is done, simply attach the grid cloth to the front. It's easy once you figure it out. Now the diffusion material is a grid cloth, and my meter tells me it's a 1.5 stop diffuser. I'm going to put up some test footage so that you can compare the shadow quality of the light with the exposed diodes versus the plastic diffuser and the softbox. Here it is with just the exposed LED diodes. Here's the shadow quality with the diffuser attached. And here is the results with the softbox attached. The softbox also includes a control grid, which helps control and narrow down the spill of the light if that's something that you need. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have a lot of lights, and I wasn't sure about this particular light when I first pulled it out of the box. I didn't quite know how I felt about it and whether or not it would find a place in my kit. But having played with it for several weeks and slowly peeling back the layers and really getting to know its strengths and its quirks, the more I've come to like it. For me, the really high color render and sufficient output at 60 watts makes it a good fit for a compact studio key light. Its full RGB functionality also makes it a very versatile background light if I want to throw some color into the mix. Its lightweight construction means that I would be comfortable suspending it and using it as a backlight, and the attached barn doors mean that I can cut the light to control the spill, preventing flaring, which is a huge pet peeve of mine. The inclusion of the DMX ports means that I also have the option of controlling the light remotely if suspended from above when I eventually pick up a DMX controller down the line. A functionality that I really wish I could have tested for this video. For me, this is a good studio light with a ton of functions, and the studio is where it will find its home. It is not, however, something that I'm going to be taking out on set and running around with, mostly because of the lack of weather sealing and the potential damage that could come from exposure to the elements. I think this light is perfect for YouTubers or people with small studios that are looking for a budget RGB light with a ton of functionality. Well guys, that's it for another gear review. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you found it useful, please let me know by leaving it a thumbs up. Or you can leave me a comment down below. If you end up picking up this light for yourself, I'd love to hear about your experiences with it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.